Welcome back to another episode of the Sacred Giggle podcast. As always, this is your host, Ashish, aka ShiShi, aka perennially dressing up as Aladdin for Halloween. Guys and girls, it is so good to be back with another brand new conversation on the show. This is our first conversation with a guest in almost 2 months. I've been holding down the fort in the meantime with the weekly Scary Sunday solo cast episodes, but I'm really, really excited to be bringing back some conversations on the show, and this one is super special. Our guest on the show today is Carolyn D'Amore. She is a truly incredible woman, entrepreneur, and creative force. She has lived many lives in her lifetime. She's worn many hats. She's been a DJ, a model, an actress. She started her own fashion lines. And most recently, she is the CEO and founder of Pizza Girl, a brand new company bringing organic, sugar-free sauces to the market, pizza sauces to the market. And in this episode, we're going to get into her story. We're going to get into the onus behind why she started her company. And I have to say, guys, she is honestly one of the most inspiring people I've had on the show. Her outlook towards life, her confidence in her ideas, and her natural leadership abilities that have allowed her to be successful in so many different fields and now really be making a lot of waves in an industry that, as you'll hear, is very near and dear to her heart, is really, really inspiring. And I think all of the people that listen to this show, there's a lot of you out there who are creatives, entrepreneurial, people who are trying to do your own thing in life. You're going to get so much value out of this. So without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy this conversation with Carolyn D'Amore. I was reading an interview that you had done with someone else just before this, and you had mentioned that you originally left high school, I think, when you were in ninth grade. And you said something really interesting, which is that you felt like you just didn't have a click. And that really was interesting to me because I also felt like that in school. I went to a prep school, completely didn't fit in because I was raised outside of the States. And then I moved to America and I'm Indian, but like not really Indian. So I also had that feeling of not really fitting in. And from what I've seen with people, that can kind of go one of two ways, where some people seem to respond to that type of early experience by really letting it negatively get to them and like feeling like they don't really have permission to, do what they want to do and just always sort of being like on the back foot with life. And then other people seem to really just take an experience like that and kind of just allow it to propel them and allow it to motivate them to just be like, well, I'm just going to do whatever I want then because like I can't really depend on other people to give me that approval. And, this is where I would love to turn it over to you. But from what I've seen based on your story, I would place you at least, externally from what I observe in the latter camp. You went to New York when you were 17 to model, and then you started your first fashion line and like super young, and then you started another one, and then you did music and film and TV, and then we'll get into what you're doing now with Pizza Girl. Can you, like, if you reflect about your own experience with that feeling of not quite fitting in or having a click, what do you think it is that allowed you to take that and use it to help you, just basically do what you want in your life?
As you get older, you really start to reflect on your childhood more and like how you ended up the way that you are. And I've been doing a lot of that lately, and I really realized that a lot of it comes from the fact that I didn't have a mom. She passed away when I was 5, and I have a 7-year-old now, so I can see how much she needs me, and how much I give to her and how much lack I had. I mean, I had a dad, but he had 6 kids and a business, and it was very hard for him to give any sort of real guidance. And I think my whole life I just wanted like to feel safe and have some sort of security of just like, approval. And that's what parents are there for. They're there to tell you you're great. They're there to like kind of approve of you. So I It's interesting. I noticed right away that I was not fitting into any specific clique. You know what I mean? But I also had this way of blending into all of them. Like I could go and hang out with the, super studious kids. I could go hang out with the music kids, the really bad kids, the troubled kids, the really good kids. I had a way of kind of just blending in. And I think maybe that was like a safety, maybe like a protective thing that I developed in trying to just survive, like a survival. Now that I think about it, yeah, some sort of like survival technique, really. But yeah, I never did get super close. I don't have a lot of super, super close friends, and I didn't back then. I think I more so do now because I figured out kind of like who I am and what is important to me. But yeah, now that I look back, a lot of my relationships were very like fun and based on having fun, and they weren't super deep. And I think that was like a way for me to protect myself. Like, I don't need anybody. I'm going to be fine. And I'm just always in survival mode.
Right.
So I think that's kind of where it came from.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine what that must be like to be that, like, you lose your mom that young, maybe at an age where like you can't even really fully like understand what that the implications of that are.
You don't. I just remember feeling like aching pain now that I look back, just like on days where there was just an ache, like a really deep ache where I just yearned for her so badly. And yeah, and just never got it. So I think that is definitely like a hole. And as you get older, you learn to build up these walls and protect yourself from that aching and that feeling. So yeah, it kind of just made me almost feel also knowing that death is very real. A lot of kids don't know. They don't think about death. They don't want to talk about death. They don't want to talk about their parents dying. I was born and then I knew that life was short. So I also knew that I wasn't going to waste my time with anybody that wasn't like kind of on my wavelength. I always knew life was short, and it was good and bad for me. It was good in that I really went out there and tried to do everything I wanted to do. I didn't let anybody tell me no, but also bad in that I was not scared to die myself. So I became a really kind of wild party girl for many years. But I also always found ways. I was like the least wild of all the wild people in the wild groups. You know what I mean? So I was always just like able to be there, get it out of my system, and then like also wake up and go to work the next day. So it was a very weird, I'm a weird Gemini.
Nice.
Yeah.
One thing that you said kind of in passing that I want to dive into is like, when you're faced with death that early on, first of all, I completely agree with you that many kids don't really understand death. And I would even say many adults and just human beings for their whole life don't really understand, or like they know conceptually that they're going to die, but they don't really live like that. Like they just like are just going along each day. And I think what you said about your ability to just dive into whatever you want and just kind of fearlessly be like, I want to start a fashion line. Like, I'm going to go move to New York when I'm like 17. That is, I think it's really admirable. And I would love to dive into like what was, and I guess still is, your psychology around that, because I know so many people, and myself included in the past, and a lot of people that listen to this show, that's something they really struggle with, is really allowing themselves to just be like, this is what I'm going to do. This is my life. I'm just going to go do it. And people's self-doubt and insecurities can really get in the way of that. And I would love to hear like just your internal experience with that.
I've had this blind faith that I am awesome. And I don't know where it comes from, but I know that I am a good person. I know that I have great ideas. And then if I believe that everybody around me is going to believe, and I've proved that time and time again, you kind of almost have to have this kind of like reckless like abandonment. You have to almost, to be like a true, like successful entrepreneur, you have to have a little screw loose. You know what I mean? Like you can't, you almost have to be so blind to all the scary stuff. You just have to go. I was just watching this documentary yesterday of the world. She was a skier. Anyway, not to go off but she was terrified all the time and she would just go and not think about the ramifications. Because if you do, if you're only worried about what people are going to think and what could go wrong, then you're never going to make it. So it's literally living day by day. And I think also because I know life is short, like I'm going to make today work for me. I'm going to make it the best day ever because I don't know. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. I used to do it in a more reckless way of like, my therapist told me I had fuck it mentality when I was, teens and 20s, and where I just was kind of like, fuck it, like I'm gonna go do this, do that. I was a DJ as well, and I toured around, and I actually was very successful at it. But the party lifestyle definitely took a hold of me, which I had to change my life at that point when it got really dark. So yeah, I mean, you just have to. I've failed in all those businesses you mentioned, right? So I was an actress, failed. I was a model, failed. I was you know, an entrepreneur where I started my swimwear line. I was on the cover of magazines. I was cover of Maxim, sold it all, all the Kardashians are wearing it. I was doing huge runway shows. I found funding. Like who does that at 19, 20 years old? And that company failed and miserably. But those failures are what is making me into a successful person. Like the failures, you need to appreciate. You guys, that's the one thing I got to tell you. Like you wouldn't be where you are without your failures. Like you have to learn those lessons the hard way. You're not going to read a manual. This is what I don't like. I don't like how all these entrepreneurs come out and they go, "Oh, it's so easy. You follow these steps." That is bullshit. Okay. It's not easy. So don't let them sell you a dream. It is hard. It is very hard. I saw a quote today actually from a woman entrepreneur that I really respect. She's one of the co-founders of Dry Bar. And she goes, you don't start a successful company. You don't do that. You start a company and then you work your ass off to make it successful. And you figure out and learn from your mistakes. And that's what I did. I continue. And even right now, I'm continuing to learn from my mistakes, but I also won't quit this time. When I failed at other things, it was just like, it was done. But Pizza Girl is something that I have already done and lost, and I'm never going to give up. Right. So through COVID, through my divorce, it's been shut down a couple times, but I just keep getting right back up. And I think that happens for you when it's finally your truth. So I ran from the pizza girl thing my whole life. Like my dad's the pizza man. I didn't want to be the pizza girl. All my friends were rich. I grew up in Malibu, but I'm the girl, in the little apartment across the street from their mansions. And my dad's the pizza man. And I'm delivering pizzas just to make enough money to go out at night with my friends and things like that. And as a teenager, you don't appreciate it. You go, this isn't cool or whatever. So I ran from the pizza girl thing and I realized that's why I kept failing, because I wasn't identifying with my authentic self. And once I finally was embracing being the pizza girl, it all started to come together. So there's cool things we can all do. There's this and that. But if music isn't who you were from the moment you were born to do it, if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, like I was really good at DJing, but ultimately I was doing it for the wrong reasons. I was doing it because I wanted to be in the club. I wanted to be partying with my friends. And, I had managers that were like, you could be so huge if you just focused and but it wasn't in my soul. It wasn't in my blood. And Pizza Girl is. So that's why it's working.
Oh my God, you got to say that 5 times louder for all the musicians and DJs
Yeah.
that are listening to this, because it's so true. And especially like right now, because everyone is a DJ and it's just so like, yeah, I mean, it's cool. Like, and that's a process that people have to go through, just like you went through your own process with that. I can even say for me as an artist, I'm stepping away from DJing a little bit because I see how it's very short-term gratification. And I'm not saying that this is the case for some people are like born to be DJs and that's cool. But for me, it's like, no, I want to like write songs and play guitar. And like, I grew up listening to like Jimi Hendrix. Like I want to make that kind of music, even if it's not like relevant or whatever. But taking that leap can be really scary, as you alluded to, especially when the thing that is less authentic is working
Tell me about it.
for you.
I had 2 record deals. I toured the whole world. I was one of the first female DJs to have a residency in Vegas with billboards up and down the strip at the Hard Rock. I mean, I had it really going for me. And this was before everybody was a DJ. There were very few female DJs. I was totally like kind of made fun of for DJing by people who are now DJs. And I'm always trying to look for that kind of like open, unique kind of niche. And I think that that's really valuable as well. Don't just jump on the train because everybody else is. Maybe find something that is lacking. And for me, there were no females DJing at the time. And I found that to be really sad. So I jumped in and it worked. And then realized I was kind of doing it for the wrong reasons. And then finally found my truth. And it's all coming together. So if I could give anybody any advice, it's just don't be afraid or ashamed of who you truly are, because people, even on Instagram and this and that, and like the music of somebody that you're going to buy, like you can tell when they're faking it till they make it. And you can feel that that inauthentic vibe from, even through the phone. So I feel like the people that truly make it in any field, it's coming from a real need. And a lot of these entrepreneurs are just like about the bottom line. They just want to build up the company to sell it. That's a very different thing. I think that the companies that really truly like end up imprinted on your mind and in society and in pop culture forever are the ones that came from a really true, authentic story.
Yeah, and I want to dive into that story for you specifically a little more, because you had mentioned, just for the listeners out there, and I'll post some info on you and stuff in the show notes too, but you had mentioned that, you started this company and then COVID hit and like the supply chain got all messed up and then you had to shut it down. And then you actually like didn't give up on it and you restarted it. And now it's thriving again. And how it was kind of this homecoming for you, coming back to this identity that you had maybe shunned a little bit. And one thing that I read in an interview of yours before this was that somebody had asked about like what was the inspiration for the company, and you had actually mentioned your own child and saying like that you're a millennial mom and you wanted to find healthier organic sauces that don't have sugar added, which is amazing because they all have sugar in them.
I know.
And so I'm curious, I would love to get deeper into like what did it feel like for you this time around, knowing that this is your truth? Like what was the feeling and how is that different from previous times?
It feels so different.
Yeah.
You're right. I mean, you're right. You've nailed it. It feels so different. It feels like there is no way to stop you. I mean, imagine like my first breakdown in the company, I was with a small factory and they ruined like $40,000 worth of sauce. At the time, I was paying for each batch from my DJ gigs and piecemealing it all together and bootstrapping everything. So to lose that much, and it was a mom and pop company, and there was no way I was going to get that money back. Otherwise, I would be tied up in lawsuits, and I just had to keep going forward, right? So anybody would think, I'm done. It's over. Once I was done crying and feeling bad for myself, I got a loan. I got a loan of $80,000, which was really scary, to know that you're going to have to pay that back and figure things out. And I went and bought back all the sauce that was like, made incorrectly. And then I started back at zero. And I was like, okay, I fixed my issue. Now I'm back at zero. Now what? So I then, just keep on like every time you hit a bump, you just have to keep reworking it, right? So then my next bump was COVID. I sell out of every jar of sauce I have in 2 days when that big supermarket crash happened. And I called to source my ingredients and they're telling me that the big companies who do organic, they bought up immediately. They saw it coming before we did. They bought up all the organic farms and just basically like, I don't know what the word is, but they bought it all up and said like, hold this for me, here's money. So the little guy wasn't able to source any of their ingredients. So I just remember crying my eyes out, writing a post on Instagram, and then sitting there and doing individual emails to every single supermarket buyer that I had a relationship with. And I said, personal message to each of them. I said, this is what's happening. Please don't forget about me. Please don't give up on me. I'm so sorry that I can't fulfill these orders. And I know it's going to be really hard to get back in. I said, but don't forget me, because I promise, like, I'm going to reformat my company so that something like this could never happen again. And that's exactly what I did. I shut down. I was devastated again. And I found these two amazing partners, and I found a really incredible, co-packing partner. I have an incredible sales team partner now. And like, that was me just emailing. I emailed out of the blue the CEO of Alliance Sales. And if you look them up, they are one of the top CPG sales, which is consumer packaged goods sales companies. They did Chobani and all RX Bar and all these huge brands. I just emailed the CEO, went straight to the CEO, didn't go to anybody below him. I emailed him over and over and over again. And he finally wrote me back and he said, well, you're not going to give up. I'm going to entertain this with a Zoom call because you're hilarious. And that is the same way that I got into Erewhon. I walked into Erewhon and I said, who do I have to talk to? And they're like, that's not how you do this. And I was like, well, I'm here. This is how I do it. Now what? And luckily the office was upstairs. I sat up there all day. You just have to do whatever you can possibly do every day. And people will start to take notice, especially if you have a great product. Like, one thing I got to say is don't start a product and have it be mediocre and then do all this work, put all your heart and soul into it, and then the product doesn't mount up to all of your hard work. Like, first you got to focus on having an incredible product that means something to you. It comes from my lineage. It comes from my family. It's solving a problem on the shelves with no sugar added, women owned. They're all male dominated, old world right now in the sauce market. There's not one female, like, led, pink and green and blue jar of sauce. It's all, the Italian colors, and it's, the Rayos and the Newmans and the Carbone. And it's like, if you're not, the head of a mob or a grandmother, you have no place on these shelves. Well, everybody told me that. They were like, you're never going to get that shelf space. But I end up getting all the shelf space because they want something unique. So, and then when they try it, after the uniqueness is what makes them take it off the shelves, then they try it and they go, oh, wow. Oh, wow. And it backs it up,
Right. Totally. So, yeah, I mean, what you're talking about, you said a lot of things there that the thing that kept going through my mind was like, this is so much bigger than you. Like,
it is.
There's the representation for women. There's the fact that you wanted a healthy pasta sauce for your own children as a mother, the fact that it has to do with your lineage. And then you also mentioned all of these personality traits that you have that you kind of alluded to, like maybe that you've sort of always had that. And I'm curious, like, with all the other ventures that you've done, like, whether it was modeling or starting a fashion line or your work as an actress or music or DJing, you had mentioned a few times, like with DJing, that you weren't doing it for the right reasons. Did you still feel like you had that same tenacity with all those different things? Or do you feel like having this bigger purpose gives you like this different level of tenacity?
You know what it is? Like, I definitely, when I set my mind to a goal, I go all in, right? I'm all in. And I definitely have this ability to get people to believe in what I'm doing. If I believe, they believe, and it's pretty cool. And with DJing, there were nights, like I definitely have like a musicality about me where if I wasn't wasted, I would do a really great performance. But a lot of times I ruined it, crash and burning mixes because I was wasted and just crazy. But the couple nights where I was really like on and nailed it and it was just epic, I knew it was the same. It felt, weirdly enough, it's the same energy as when I stand in a supermarket and I'm giving out samples and I'm telling my story. Like, when you're in sync with the universe and with yourself, it feels very rewarding. You have that immediate gratification, like you said, I have it now from my customers, before you have it from your fans at the show. It's nice to have people kind of, you know, respect and enjoy what you're doing, but you got to look at the results, right? So, you know, I just had too many bad nights DJing, and it just clearly wasn't the right path for me. It led me to some really dark places. And I had some really close friends. The person who got me into DJing and even made me even give two craps about DJing, you know, committed suicide and had a really hard life. And it's just a dark world. For me it was, you know, in that era, it really was. I think that there's a new kind of like kind of techie, kind of cool, nerdy DJ vibe now that's not just like the rock star who's like doing cocaine off the turntables, you know?
Yeah.
Peace, love, and tech, man.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting. I really like the comparison you just made between that feeling of flow when you're DJing, those times that you said that, you know, you weren't necessarily wasted and you were actually like in the pocket and connecting with people, and how that's the same feeling when you're, you know, now in your business with Pizza Girl. Did you feel like, I mean, I know you've been an entrepreneur, sounds like, for most of your life, in the sense that you started a fashion line, and also even like being an artist in a way is being an entrepreneur. But I guess now, you know, you're really running a business, you're a CEO. What was the transition like going into that from being more like on the creative, like more of a creative kind of career?
Very difficult. I mean, I found out really quickly that I definitely needed to surround myself with some really smart people, some mentors, people in my industry, people who have built businesses and sold them. Because I remember when I first was getting started, and I immediately only focused on the aesthetic. Well, obviously the product for sure. I always had that down. But then when it came to the business, I was, you know, spending money on and hiring people to do these really amazing elaborate photo shoots and things that it was so artistic that it wasn't food. Do you know what I mean? It was too artistic. Like my girlfriend Janelle Shirtcliffe, she's an incredible like cinematographer, photographer, but she shoots for like Vanity Fair and like, you know, Variety and all of that. Like it just didn't resonate with eat me. You know what I mean? So I was like very creative, and it was all my creativity, and I wasn't the schooled, you know, studied business person. So the truth is that you do need to surround yourself with the people who know. And in the past like few years, I have been through going through an intense, almost like my college now, right? So it's like a business cram session, but I'm learning a lot. I know what I'm talking about. I know my numbers. I know, you know, my stats, my margins. I know when I'm getting to profitability. I know I can see like the clear path, you know, to my sale down the road if that's the route I want to go. You know, my supermarkets are just all saying yes. I know what I have to do to please all of them and keep them happy, and you know, so I'm really truly like dedicating my life, my business life to this. And that means that I have to learn a whole new world of things. So it was very difficult at first. It's really hard to just go straight from creative brain to business brain. It takes a lot of creativity, but it also takes, you know, a bit more of a structured life.
Right. Yeah, totally. And I think that's something that a lot of creatives really struggle with because it doesn't come naturally to them.
At all.
Because like if they had it their way, I mean, I know for myself too, like if really like what I really want to do all day is just like just play and just like be like making sounds in Ableton. Like I literally just have no accountability to anyone or anything. And I think, you know, you said a couple things there about that you really put yourself in a position of like student and like, okay, there's a lot here that I need to absorb and learn. But I think at the same time, though, what you mentioned earlier about this ability that you have to really rally people behind a cause or an idea that you believe in probably is what magnetized those people to you that had those complementary skill sets. And I know you've touched on it a few times where you're like, I don't really know where it comes from, but I want to kind of try to drill into that because like I think that's so that like natural, if you want to call it leadership ability, or just like that belief that's infectious. Like, what do you think that is, or like, how can that be cultivated in someone who maybe is struggling? Like, maybe someone who feels like they have an idea, but they're just like, how am I going to get people to believe in this? You know?
I can tell you, you need to learn how to empower others and like really make people feel like a lot of people mess up where they feel like they're the know-it-all, they know everything. You don't build a team that way, right? I remember I was doing a radio show and I worked for DJ Ski. Do you know who that is? Anyway, he's got this big radio platform and I programmed like 25 stations for him, had my own show. I remember what he would do. He would really empower me. And the more he would tell me I was great and I had this, the more I would do. I mean, the fact that I was programming 4 radio stations 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and doing all the programming, hiring all the, like doing I've never done that in my life. It's because of the way he empowered me and made me feel smart and strong. And I think that that is so important. Like, if you want to be a leader, don't tear people down, tell them they're not doing great. Find the things that they're doing really well and put them in that department. You know what I mean? Like, everybody's got a strength. Work with everybody's strengths and don't force them to, like, even myself, like I am, I'm learning all of these things, but I truly am like, I'm a founder, I'm a promoter, I create the business. When it comes to sitting down and doing spreadsheets and working out the numbers, like I have help, I have teams. I want to know it all and learn it all, and I do. I need to. But yeah, I mean, you have to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. If you're the smartest person in the room, then you're not that smart. You know what I mean? Like, you really want to surround yourself with people that have done it smarter than you, and you want to empower all of your employees and all the people you work with by telling them, "Oh my God, what you did that the other day, like that led to this and that. Keep that up. Like, that's incredible." That's what's going to get people excited to work with you and to get behind you, you know? Just reminding people what they did wrong is just, it's going to lead to destruction every time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really good point. And I think also, the point you made about understanding where your limitations are and just being able to get help. And like, there's this great book that I just read, which is called Who Not How. And it's basically like the thesis is like, the moment you start asking yourself how to do something and you start not having an answer, you just change the question to who rather than how. And it's like, who can help me with this? But as at the same time, you also said, you do need to learn all of those things so that you can speak the language. And I think finding that balance is super important.
Absolutely. And also, I met with the founder of this incredible cookware company called Hexclad, and he has a poster in his office of this like machine, this like toaster machine he made on his one of his first jobs that failed miserably. And he keeps it in his office as a reminder of that failure, because the failures are what led him to being the CEO and founder of Hexclad, which is huge. And he said to me when he heard my story, he goes, "You know why you're going to make it?" He goes, "It's because you know where your holes are." So many entrepreneurs think that they have it all perfect. And when they walk into a room, they say, "I know everything. This is going to make it. This is the next big thing. This is like going to blow up and there's no issues and it's going to be amazing." That's going to get that investor to walk right out the door, because you aren't true. You're not truly looking at, okay, here are my holes. Here's what I'm going to do to fix them. These are my problems. If you know your issues, you are going to solve them. An investor wants to invest in somebody who knows where their holes are at. So definitely always look for your problems and how you can solve them.
Amazing. Well,
Yeah.
so we have about 5 minutes left. And first of all, this has been incredible. Like, I'm super inspired. Like, this is like, I'm like, I need to go start a business now. So thank you so
Yay.
much for taking the time. And I know this is going to add so much value to everyone that hears it. I have a final question that I ask all my guests at the end. But before I get to that, there's just one more thing I wanted to touch on, which is, I think for someone hearing this conversation or just doing a brief cursory look at you and your career, it could be very easy for them to maybe create this image of like, wow, this woman is just like on another level. And like, she's just like, when does she sleep? And she's like doing all this stuff. And so I'd love to get a sense from you on especially with everything that you've gone through and like everything the world has gone through over the last 2 years, could you speak a little bit about any sort of habits or the way that you approach taking care of yourself and really being in a position where you can come on a show like this and just like inspire me and inspire everyone who's listening and doing all the things that you're doing? Because I think that's something that we don't always hear from people that are really high performers, you know? So I think that'd be really valuable.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to say that I have my hard days. You know what I mean? I have my days where I just want to tune out the world and I just feel depressed and down. So I'm a total human as well. But I think it's really important, like this morning I just woke up, it was dark. If you really want to have a business, like wake up early, go to bed early. As boring as that sounds, it's actually quite exciting because you get a little time to yourself in the morning. I went for a jog. I live in Marina Del Rey. I've been jogging every morning. I try to go to yoga. I try, and I have this little app on my phone called Insight Timer, and I've been trying to meditate every day. And I'm one of those people that, you know, kind of thinks meditation is a sham, but then, I'm doing it every day. So clearly there's something to it. But so I think it's just trying to better yourself every day. And it doesn't work all the time. Sometimes I have a great meditation and I like feel amazing. And sometimes I'm like, so it's like, I just don't be fake or phony. And I feel like you will just get through each day, one day at a time. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay to have a shitty day. It's okay, but you have to get right back up and have a good day the next day. You know what I mean? Like, you have to keep on getting up and going. I think that's really it. I mean, it can be really hard. And lately it's been really hard for me. So I can relate to people who are sad, stressed, and struggling, but there's also so much beauty in getting up and getting a little bit further each day. Each day I get a little bit further in my company. And some days it doesn't feel like a whole lot. And some days it feels like, wow, this big change happened. So, yeah, you just got to get out of bed.
Amen to that. Okay, final question. And I ask this to all my guests. It's a bit more of like an esoteric question. You don't need to think super deeply, like whatever just pops into your head. So the question is, Carolyn, what makes you feel the most free?
It's definitely water. Something about water, as weird as that sounds, like I love to be with nature, in nature. When I get stuck in the rat race and I'm just indoors all day long, it's like I just got to get out and get into nature. So I call myself a waterfall chaser. I love to hike to the most beautiful waterfalls, and that's my thing. And turning off my phone, to be honest, like turning off my phone and just getting out into nature, that can save your life. I do believe it.
That is some words of wisdom right there.
Yeah, and it sounds like, I mean, so obvious, and everybody says it and everybody, but like sometimes I wonder, I'm like, why is my like chest heavy and why am I freaking? Oh, I've been in this enclosed space for however long. Sometimes you got to get out and your mind will change and your ideas will change and then you go back to work. You just got to, yeah, get out.
Well said. Amazing. Thank you so much for being on the show. I really enjoyed having you, and hopefully we'll get to meet in person at one point soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And to all your listeners, check out Pizza Girl, pizzagirl.com. You can order there. There's, I'm growing. I'll be across the country soon. Look out for, and Pizza Girl Official on Instagram.
Thank you all so much for tuning in to this episode of the Sacred Giggle podcast with Carolyn D'Amore. Be sure to check her out in the show notes. I've linked to her Instagram as well as Pizza Girl's website and a bunch of other resources so that you can get to know her better. And if you enjoyed this show, if you've been enjoying the show, it would mean the world to us if you could hit us with a follow on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast. And if you really enjoyed it and are feeling extra generous, leaving a 5-star review on the show means a lot to us. It helps us move up in the rankings so that we can spread these conversations and ideas to more people. Thank you all so much. Sending you so much love, and I'll see you soon. Peace.